Hey y'all, and welcome back here to another week on Guns and Butter with your favorite cousin, Kinda G. I hope everybody's having a great week so far and y'all are ready to dive into this week's case because I have another juicy one for y'all. And it's super recent, like hot off the press, okay? So hot that the trial doesn't even start until next year, so I will definitely have to keep y'all posted on what happens. But I'm sure after listening to all the facts of this case, we're gonna be pretty positive what the verdict is gonna be. So I'm not going to keep y'all waiting any longer. Y'all know the drill. Come on in, sit down, get comfortable, and let's dive in.
That's what it's all about. Guns and butter, baby.
All right, y'all. So this week at the dinner table, I'm going to be telling y'all about the murder of 13-year-old Kei'Mani Latigue. Kei'Mani was born on March 28th, 2011. She was a bright, beautiful little girl, full of life and potential. And at the time of this case, she was living with her grandma, Dorothy, in Toledo, Ohio. Her mom, Tiara Caston, and her dad, Darnell Jones. Nope, not that Darnell Jones. All right, y'all. So her parents separated. They went their separate ways. And while they did get to see her from time to time, it was Grandma Dorothy who raised her on a daily basis. Now, Darnell still lived close by with his girlfriend and their child, Kei'Mani's half-sister. And her mom, Tiara, lived in Cleveland and had other kids as well. And there's no real details as to why neither of her parents had custody of her. And Dorothy didn't end up getting legal guardianship until 2024, so I don't know what was going on in her life to where her parents couldn't raise her. But prior to that, Kei'Mani had spent her early years with her mom's godmother. But throughout all the moves and all the changes, Kei'Mani stayed strong. She switched schools a few times and just trying to catch her footing, but by 2024, she was finally thriving and she was stable. As a 7th grader at Spring Elementary, Kei'Mani was an honor roll student, and she was known for her bright smile and big heart. Her teachers just adored her. Her classmates said that she was always kind and always willing to help others. In fact, before all this went down, she was set to receive the Kindness Award, and this is something that everybody agreed that she truly earned. But she loved old school music, she loved video games and sports, especially basketball and football. And she absolutely loved her some Miss Pac-Man. And when Grandma Dorothy had company over, Kei'Mani made it a point to always look out for the little kids, just making sure that they were having fun. She was the life of the party. She was truly one in a million. She was sweet, funny, thoughtful, just the perfect kid. And her 14th birthday was coming up on March 28th, and she told her grandma that she wanted to have a basketball-themed birthday party, so she was really looking forward to that. However, Kei'Mani had been telling people for a while that things weren't right at home. She even confided in her teachers, not just the ones at Spring Elementary, but schools before that too, saying that she didn't feel safe where she was living. Now, we all know teachers are mandatory reporters, and they did what they were supposed to do. They called CPS, but like many times before, nothing really changed. And whatever was going on at home, nobody seemed to step in to protect her. Now, one of her teachers did say that Kei'Mani was living with a different guardian back when she made the first report. And later, Dorothy even admitted to using physical discipline, but CPS spoke to Kei'Mani alone and she told them that she did feel safe with her grandma. But yet and still, her teacher did say the signs were there. Bruises, fear, hesitation. One classmate even remembered Kei'Mani showing up to school with marks on her arms. And she told her friend that her and her grandma had gotten into a fight. And outside of school, Kei'Mani spent most of her time by herself. Dorothy worked long hours, so Kei'Mani would go straight home after school and be home for the rest of the evening with Dorothy's 2 dogs. But Dorothy said that Kei'Mani was really responsible. She had her own key, she always checked in before she went anywhere, and she even had a phone too, just in case anything happened. So the last people to see Kei'Mani were her parents. Her mom, Tiara, saw her on Saturday, March 15th. And then Darnell saw her the next day, Sunday the 16th. So Darnell dropped her off at her mom's house, and then Kei'Mani spent the day with her mom. But later that day, Darnell got a call from Kei'Mani saying that she was scared. She thought that there was an intruder outside, and she was too afraid to be alone. So Darnell and his cousin stayed with her until around 12:30 in the morning. And then that next day, Monday morning, when Dorothy got home from work, she said the front door was unlocked and the house was a mess. Gas on the stove was running and Kei'Mani was nowhere to be found. Her house key and glasses were left inside, along with her sleep clothes and underwear. And Dorothy immediately jumps into grandma mode. She starts making all the precautionary calls, but still no Kei'Mani. And at this time, she calls the police. So once it's made clear that Kei'Mani is gone, a police report was filed and she was officially listed as a missing child. And that next day, Dorothy spoke with 13 Action News and she described what she seen when she came home. She said, quote, "When I came home, she wasn't here. She was supposed to be on her way to school, but when I walked in, the whole house was a mess. I called her school to talk to her, and they said she never showed up. I went up there myself and had them check again, but still nothing." And that wasn't even the strangest part, because she said when she got home, the front door was unlocked. And when she stepped inside, she smelled gas. The stove was on, but there was no fire. And the only people that live in this house is Kei'Mani, her grandma, and those two dogs. So who could have possibly turned on the stove? Then she noticed that Kei'Mani's glasses and her underwear were left by the couch. Her pajamas were on the dining room floor, and everything was just off. And during this interview, Darnell was standing right next to Dorothy, and you can just hear the confusion and what seemed to be pain in his voice. And by this time, everybody's still trying to call her phone, but at this point, it's going straight to voicemail. But Darnell said that she tried calling him around 1:29 p.m. And then she called his girlfriend 5 more times, and the last call was placed at 1:49 p.m. So she was definitely trying to get in touch with somebody. But when police started asking questions, one thing that was clear was that nobody had seen or talked to Kei'Mani. So the big question was, who was the last person to see her alive? It was Darnell. He was the last person to see her alive. He told reporters, quote, "Yeah, I came over here because she said somebody was trying to break into the house. So me and my cousin, we came, we sat here for about an hour. We left around 12:30, and then she called me at 1:29. I missed it, but she was calling everybody else too." Now, the community came together and a search party went down on March 21st. Folks from all over Toledo, even nearby cities, pulled up to show support and to look for this little girl. Flyers were being put up everywhere. Social media was lit up with her name and her picture, and everyone wanted to bring Kei'Mani home. And nobody in hell believed that Kei'Mani just ran away. She was just too responsible, too grounded. And the way the house looked, that wasn't the scene of a runaway. Something definitely went down there. So investigators started zeroing in on the last person to see her alive, her dad, Darnell Jones. Now, originally, Darnell told the same story to the police that he told to the reporters at first, but over time, the details of his story started to change. Then Dorothy came forward and she told police something strange. She said that Kei'Mani's underwear, which had been laying on the living room floor, went missing right after Darnell stopped by. And this is where things started to get even darker. Because Mr. Darnell Jones wasn't new to police. His record was long, and it was full of violent crimes, domestic stuff, and a string of other charges. So this wasn't a man with a clean slate. And now, with his daughter missing, all eyes were on him. So here's the thing. Darnell was a felon, so of course by law he wasn't supposed to even touch a gun, let alone own one. So I'm gonna give y'all a quick rundown of his background and the types of crimes he was getting into before all of this happened. So he did manage to stay out of trouble for a couple years, but that piece didn't last long, because in January of 2015, Darnell was at an apartment complex with another man when things popped off. They got into it. Darnell pulled out a gun. He started firing off shots. He did miss, but he ran off. And of course, the police caught up to him. So 5 months later, the case wrapped up, but he had to do a work release program. He had to get a job and he had to do mental health treatment. He even had to wear an ankle monitor and all of that. So by November, Darnell just couldn't keep it together. He ended up violating his community control and he got sent right back to the facility. But at this time, he lost it. He was just over it. He got into it with the officer, he punched out a window, and he got another charge. He ended up going to jail for those charges and being released in June of 2017. But freedom didn't last too long because by August, he was working on his car when a man rolled up accusing him of stealing from the family. And Darnell didn't take too kindly to being accused of something. So Buddy picked up a car alternator and smashed the man in the face with it. And the guy ended up having to get 20 stitches. And although Darnell did say that this was self-defense and his wife at the time did back up some of what he was saying, he ended up being charged with felonious assault and he was supposed to serve 180 days, but the judge went light on him and gave him probation. But 6 months later, he violated that too. Then came another drunken disorderly, then another, and while waiting for that court hearing, he tried to break into some woman's house drunk again. Now, she didn't press charges, but the cops ended up hitting him with the same offense. And when they searched him, they found a knife in his pocket. So boom, carrying a concealed weapon. So back to the work release program he went. And at this point, Darnell was building up a reputation. He was known to be hot-headed, impulsive, violent, and just a straight-up menace. So by 2019, Darnell and his wife were living in an apartment in East Toledo, and everybody in that building knew all of their business because of the fights. They were just so loud, the screaming, the banging on the walls, it was a lot. So the neighbors said that this was constant. And on this particular night in July, it went way too far. Darnell snapped. He started throwing things around the apartment, and he ended up putting his hands on her. He choked her, and he even threw 2 TVs off the second floor balcony. And he was just seconds away from throwing her off the balcony as well. But all the while, the neighbors heard it all. The glass breaking, the yelling, just the pure chaos. And it got so bad that the neighbors, of course, called the police. So when the police showed up, of course, his wife was shaken up, but she was still alive. And she didn't want to press charges. She was scared, but she was loyal to her man, okay? Now, the neighbors, on the other hand, they wanted to speak up and they wanted to give statements. So their statements plus the mess inside the apartment was enough for the police to arrest Darnell on assault and domestic violence charges. However, the charges got dropped and he ended up pleading guilty to domestic violence. And again, he was supposed to serve 180 days, but instead he only served 11. Now, fast forward to April of 2020. Darnell ended up getting shot in the chest, y'all. So the word is that he was trespassing on somebody's property.
State!
Yeah.
This?
Yeah.
State!
Hey.
It's the road, dude. This ain't no state property. This is private property. State!
They got into an argument. Things escalated. One shot was fired. And somehow no charges were filed. But by 2022, dude was still wilding out, and police found him drunk in a daycare parking lot. And Buddy had a gun in his hand, and he had already fired it off at some point. And when they searched him, they found paraphernalia. So now we'll fast forward to present time. Kei'Mani's just gone missing, and Darnell's starting to move a little bit differently, acting real sketchy now. And his new girlfriend at the time, Nina Turner, noticed that he'd been acting different. When he would come over to her house, he would ask her to turn the security cameras off. He said, quote, he didn't like being recorded. Then one day, a family member told Nina that they'd seen Darnell hiding something under the basement stairs. And at first, she didn't really think too much of it because, like a lot of other people, she believed that Kei'Mani ran away. But when she finally decided to check under the basement stairs and see what was actually there, her stomach dropped. Now, I don't know what she found under them stairs just yet, but I'm almost positive it'll come up during the trial though. But whatever it was enough for her to call the detectives. They pulled up, took whatever it was into evidence, and from this point on, this case was no longer a missing persons case. It was now a murder investigation. Now, while at Nina's house, the detectives, of course, searched the rest of the house and they searched that basement. And in the basement, they found muddy work boots and a rolled up rubber car mat. Now, here's the thing, y'all. Darnell didn't have no job and he hadn't worked for a while. So there would be no real reason for there to be muddy work boots just sitting there. So that was red flag number 1. So the cops bagged up whatever evidence they could find and they hurried up and left the house before Darnell got home. But when he did, he noticed that his little stash was gone. And just like that, he vanished. This man just dipped out, left Nina, left their baby, and she never saw him again. And she was so scared, she packed up their entire house, got their baby, and she moved into a new house before he could find her. Now, he did later try to call her from a number that was traced back to Columbus. She ignored the call, but she did turn the number straight over to police. So, along with the evidence that they found in his phone and in his house and nearby surveillance, this was enough to finally get an arrest warrant for him. So by March 23rd, Darnell was officially wanted for abduction. And y'all, the thing is, nobody in the neighborhood saw this coming. Folks from the neighborhood said that Darnell was cool. He was laid back, he was quiet, and they couldn't believe that he might have been behind something this bad. But then they finally got the break they needed in this case. You see, 3 years before Kei'Mani disappeared in 2022, there had been this huge house fire in East Toledo. So all the way from 2022 until when this case took place, the house stayed abandoned. It was boarded up and it was pretty much forgotten about. But by 2024, they had deemed it a hazard and they had even sent a demolition notice, but the place still sat there for months. That was until March 24th, the day after Darnell's arrest warrant went out, because that's when a body was found inside that same abandoned house on the second floor. And when word got out that a body was found inside that abandoned house, the whole block pulled up and a crowd started gathering outside, and the hearts were just pounding, hoping and praying that it wasn't Kei'Mani. But deep down, they knew. People were yelling at the detectives, demanding answers. Tell us something. Let us know. Even Kei'Mani's mom was in the crowd, and she was desperate, breaking down, begging for some type of update. But the truth was worse than what anyone could have imagined, because it was Kei'Mani. And y'all, the details of how they found her were pretty graphic, so if you want to skip forward, please do so. So she had been brutally assaulted. Her hands were completely gone, and her throat was cut so deep that she was nearly decapitated. And the autopsy showed that those neck wounds took her life. And when the officers finally told Tierra what they had found, she hit the floor. She collapsed. She fell to her knees and she cried out. And the entire community felt that pain. Even the mayor showed up, saying, quote, "It's hard to put into words just how horrible this is, not just for the family, but for everyone in the city. Whoever did this, I hope they throw the book at him. No one deserves what that young girl went through." And y'all, after this, all hell broke loose because people were starting to blame Dorothy. An angry mob showed up to her house threatening her, and detectives had to end up escorting her away from the property. But the next day, the city came together for a vigil, and hundreds showed up. Some who knew Kei'Mani and plenty who didn't. They lit candles, they brought teddy bears and balloons, they shed tears, and they said her name out loud. The city of Toledo was grieving, but anger was still burning. And amongst some of the people in the crowd was one of Kei'Mani's teachers. She came forward and said, quote, "I'm sick to my core, devastated to say the least. I made so many reports because I was worried about her safety. I was scared something like this might happen. And now, here we are." She told us some things, not just me, but other adults in the school, her bus driver, even her classmates. We called children's services more than once because we were scared for her, but nothing happened. It fell on deaf ears. She went on to say that Kei'Mani was sweet, bright, and full of love, the kind of kid who just wanted affection. Every morning, she would come in, give me a hug, and offer me her breakfast. She was just that kind of kid, kind, generous, full of light. And even the Toledo City Councilman, George Sanantero, I don't think I said that right, but he spoke out calling Kei'Mani's death, quote, "a tragedy that never should have happened." He even called out CPS directly, saying their failure to act didn't just cost a life, it exposed how broken a system is. And he even urged the media to dig deeper, to investigate how many other kids just like Kei'Mani were ignored until it's too late. So after Kei'Mani's body was found, police were on the hunt for Darnell. They put out a bolo for him and they found him the very next day in Columbus. But y'all, when SWAT pulled up on him, he looked completely different. Now, prior to this, in all of his news interviews and his mug shots and stuff like that, he had hair or like little twists, the little baby locks in his head. But now his head was completely shaved bald. So they pulled up, guns drawn, and he had his hand in his pocket, but he's like, just kill me, just kill me. But when he reached into his pocket to pull out a gun, cops fired and he got hit, I believe, 3 times. However, Buddy didn't die. They instead cuffed him, bloody and all, shot up and everything. And when they searched him, they found a revolver and a walkie-talkie. When asked what his name was, he said, "It's Kill Me." So he was taken to the hospital to be treated for his gun wounds. And now, on top of murder and sexual assault charges, he got assault on a police officer added to that list as well. Now, along with Darnell, the community had also turned on the Lucas County Children's Services because they failed to protect Kei'Mani. Now, records had been filed multiple times. Teachers, neighbors, even bus drivers called in, but nothing was done. So it turns out that Darnell wasn't even listed in their system, not as her dad, not as anyone in her life. They never even had his name. So people demanded answers, and Children's Services blamed it on short staffing and burnouts. We all know that the job is hard and the pay is low, and people quit, but the community wasn't buying that. Kei'Mani's gone, and the excuses don't fix that. So after the case broke wide open, Children's Services said that they would release their files once the prosecution was over. And in the meantime, the community turned the abandoned house where Kei'Mani's body was found into a memorial. They had flowers, candles, teddy bears, balloons, everywhere. And they even had things that celebrated her birthday because she would have turned 14 just 3 days after she was found. And y'all, the police weren't done digging because y'all remember how Darnell said that he and his cousin came to Dorothy's house the night that Kei'Mani went missing because he said that she was scared. So yeah, detectives remembered that too. So in May of 2025, they searched Darnell's cousin's house and they got some evidence. They also got his phone and his GPS records. And on there, they found out that Darnell's mom, Linda, claimed that she hadn't talked to her son after Kei'Mani went missing, but phone records say otherwise. Now, court records say that Darnell straight up admitted what he had done, and he's now facing 15 charges from tampering with evidence to kidnapping, sexual assault, and of course, murder. And this is Ohio's first death penalty case in over 10 years. And even after confessing, Darnell still pled not guilty. Like, what? So at the arraignment, all of his charges were brought up, and his bond was set to start at $4 million. But prosecutors are like, hell no, keep him locked up. Forget a bond. And the police also tried to go after his cousin, Caleb Dixon, who Darnell claimed was with him that night. So like I said, the police were able to get some information or some evidence from his mom and a woman named Lisa White. So at the moment, literally the case is still unfolding as we speak. Evidence is still being gathered, the case is still being put together. And what we do know is that Darnell's lawyers are trying to argue not guilty by reason of insanity. And they actually have until the 30th of this month to raise that defense. And if he's found guilty, he's facing the death penalty. So the case doesn't go to trial until April of next year, and I will definitely keep y'all updated on what is going on in this case. But that's the end of this week's case, y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure you leave me a comment and a 5-star review and share with a friend, y'all. And as usual, I'll see y'all back here, same place, same time next week.
That's what it's all about. Guns and butter, baby.